not much really lives up to the last 2 or 3 days. In America, I arrived late on Sunday night, and I went first to a Donald Trump rally that took place in a town called Reading in Pennsylvania.
What he did was, and what he is doing is sort of what we did a few years ago. He's doing a great job. He's always been my friend for some reason. He liked me, I liked him. He was the big winner of the last election in the UK, and he's a very spectacular man.
Today, we're counting down the top 5 moments from Nigel Farage's game-changing interview. At number 5, the question that was meant to trap him, but backfired spectacularly. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now, back to the video. As we move through the list, you'll see how Farage turned defense into offense, leaving the host struggling for words. But the number 1 moment? It's a statement about Britain's future that you need to hear for yourself. As Nigel Farage entered the studio, the tension was palpable. The host, known for his aggressive interviewing style, was clearly ready for a showdown. His opening salvo was a barrage of questions about Farage's connections to Donald Trump, aiming to paint the British politician as a mere puppet of American interests. But Farage, ever the seasoned debater, remained unruffled. His calm demeanor in the face of these accusations was striking. While many politicians might have become defensive or flustered,
Pennsylvania seemed to be the absolutely key state in every way in this election. And I was really surprised and flattered that he noticed I was in the audience.
And he's shaking it up pretty good over there. He was the big winner of the last election. Very highly respected, Nigel Farage.
Well, that was very nice of him. But hey, I've been a very loyal friend over the course of the last 9 years. I've never wavered or wobbled in my support of him, even at times when it hasn't necessarily.
Farage seemed almost amused by the host's attempts to corner him. The turning point came when the host pressed Farage on his support for Trump's policies. Instead of retreating, Farage seized the opportunity to reframe the entire conversation. He argued that his relationship with Trump was not about personal loyalty, but about securing Britain's interests on the global stage. "You see," Farage began, his voice steady and confident, "what you call cozying up to Trump is actually about ensuring Britain has a strong ally in a rapidly changing world. It's not about individuals, it's about nations." This shift in narrative caught the host visibly off guard. He had clearly expected Farage to stumble or backtrack, but instead found himself facing a broader discussion about international relations and Britain's place in the world. Farage went on to make a surprising argument about the UK-US relationship. He posited that Britain's historical ties with America were more crucial than ever in an era of rising global tensions. "We're not just clinging to old alliances," he asserted. "We're strategically positioning ourselves for the future." The immediate impact of Farage's unexpected response was evident. The host's line of questioning began to falter as he struggled to regain control of the narrative. Viewers at home, who might have expected a straightforward political mudslinging match, were instead treated to a nuanced discussion of geopolitical strategy. As the interview progressed, it became clear that Farage had successfully turned the tables. What was intended as an ambush had become a platform for him to showcase his diplomatic acumen and global perspective. But the real fireworks were yet to come. As Farage settled into his stride, he prepared to deliver a series of arguments that would leave the host truly speechless. Just when the host thought he had Farage cornered, the tables turned spectacularly. Farage's next move wasn't just a rebuttal, it was a masterstroke of political strategy that exposed a critical flaw in Britain's international agreements. How would the government respond to this bombshell? As the interview progressed, the host's questioning became increasingly aggressive. He seemed determined to paint Farage as a Trump loyalist, out of touch with British interests. But Farage, seasoned in political discourse, saw an opportunity to shift the conversation to broader issues. With a calm demeanor that belied the tension in the studio, Farage began to weave personal anecdotes into his responses. He spoke of his experiences in Washington, emphasizing how these connections allowed him to advocate effectively for Britain's interests. Diplomacy often hinges on personal relationships, Farage asserted, his tone measured but firm. The host's frustration became palpable as Farage took control of the narrative. Instead of defending his ties to Trump, Farage reframed the discussion around Britain's global role. He argued passionately for the importance of the UK-US relationship, stating, "We have to not upset Donald Trump. We have to be an ally to Donald Trump, and allies don't betray allies." But it was Farage's critique of UK-China relations that truly shifted the power dynamics of the interview. He dropped a bombshell about a 99-year lease deal with China, comparing it unfavorably to the previous Hong Kong agreement. The trouble with this deal is, there is no basis in international law that we have to do this that stands up, Farage declared, his words hanging in the air. The host, caught off guard by this revelation, struggled to regain control of the conversation. Farage, sensing his advantage, pressed on. He outlined the economic implications of prioritizing the US relationship, noting America's position as one of the UK's largest trading partners. As the interview reached its climax, Farage made a statement that left even seasoned political observers stunned. World War III matters more to this country than who wins the next election. Yes, absolutely no question about it. The gravity of his words seemed to silence the studio. With this bold declaration, Farage had not only defended his position, but had reframed the entire debate around Britain's place in a rapidly changing world order. The interview was no longer about Farage's personal connections. It had become a discussion about Britain's very future. As the dust settled on this explosive interview, it became clear that Farage had achieved something remarkable. His composed demeanor and strategic pivots left the host visibly stunned, unable to regain control of the narrative. Farage's masterful reframing of the discussion, from personal accusations to weighty matters of national security and global alliances, showcased his political acumen. This encounter carries significant implications for political discourse in Britain. It demonstrates how seasoned politicians can use media appearances to their advantage, turning potential pitfalls into platforms for their ideas. Farage's ability to shift the conversation from his personal connections to broader geopolitical issues raises questions about the effectiveness of traditional interview tactics. Looking ahead, one can't help but wonder, will this interview change how British media approaches political figures? And more importantly, how might it influence public perception of Farage and his vision for Britain's place on the world stage?